Many working professionals, despite earning regular salaries, find themselves struggling due to a number of factors. Now, the number one reason why they struggle is due to a lack of financial education. Like I said in my previous video, it doesn't matter how much you earn, how little or how high you earn. If you don't have financial education, you are still going to struggle financially. Whether you have one job or you have multiple jobs, you are still going to struggle. Now, when we talk about financial education, what do we mean? It means learning how to budget, learning how to save, learning how to manage your income or your finances. That's what it means. And many times we're not taught these things in school. We've got to learn it on our own. And that's why we have a subject called personal finance, where you have to learn how to manage your finances. Now, I get it that as working professionals, we're extremely busy. We have to go to work, take care of family, and do all of these things. And sometimes we don't even think that managing our money, it's work on its own. And it's for that reason that I've created today's video, because I see a lot of us struggling. I have struggled for the longest time, and I'm glad that I'm no longer in that area of my life. And I want to share some of the things that I did that helped me overcome the struggle despite my regular salary. Now, in order for you to overcome any of your financial struggle, you've got to have a budget. Now, even before we talk about budget, I would like us to actually talk about some of those money mindsets that we have. Many times we have these limiting beliefs that actually prevent us from overcoming the struggles because we feel a certain way when it comes to money. And I'll share some of those limiting beliefs that I had back in the day. I used to think that you need to have a lot of money for you to budget. Back in the day, I used to think like, when it comes to budgeting, that's for the rich folks. Like, that's for organizations. Why would I be trying to budget with this little money that I have? But in reality, when you have little money, it actually makes perfect sense for you to budget. Although even the more money you make, you've got to budget. But when you don't have enough, that's actually the best time for you to budget, because you don't want to spend money anyhow. So you definitely have to know exactly where your money is going to, how much you're spending in a specific area, and for you to know whether you're actually wasting money or saving money. So one of the things that I had to overcome was the fact that it did not matter how much I earned. I had to have a budget if I had to get away from this financial struggle that I had been going through for the longest time. Now, once I was able to overcome the struggle and I knew that for sure I needed to save, it was then time for me to create a budget. Having a budget is something that you must do. It does not matter whether you earn $100. It doesn't matter whether you earn $1,000. It does not matter whether you earn 100,000 or whether you earn 1,000,000. You have got to budget. Now, what does it mean to budget? I think that's another thing that causes the struggle. We think that when we think about budgeting, we feel like it's such a big task, and it's not. A budget is basically, Excel sheets. You put in your income, you put out your expenses, and you allocate your funds to several buckets, right? So it's really, really easy. And what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to link, an Excel to this video so that you can download it and you can get started with budgeting and managing your finances. Now, so when it comes to budgeting, you definitely want to list out your income, so your multiple streams of income, whether you have one job, whether you have multiple jobs, everything that brings you money, you want to list that out so that way you're able to have an income. So we're going to keep today's video really simple. Let's assume that you're earning $1,000 just to make things real simple. $1,000 is going to be my income, right? So that's the money that comes in on a monthly basis. Now, on the other side, you're going to have expenses. Now, expenses, you're going to list all the things that you're spending money on. And you've got to list out everything you're spending money on. Otherwise, you're not going to know where money is going to. Many times, we spend so much money on food and we don't even realize it. Today we're eating out, tomorrow we're buying snacks, next tomorrow we're doing this. And before you know it, like half of your income is going on food, and you're wondering why you're not losing that weight. Just kidding. Okay. But many times we spend money on food. So we have to really look out for those things that might be eating us unknowingly. Okay. So you want to write out your big buckets, right? My big buckets will be mortgage or rent, right? If you have a car note, so let's say you have your car and you're paying for it, you're going to have to list that out. Your utilities, you're going to have to list that out. Your utilities would be, you have lights, gas, internet, cable, all of those things, subscriptions, Netflix, Prime Video, all of those things, Amazon Prime, all of those things that take your money every day. You've got to list it out, right? And then go to groceries, how much are you spending on groceries? How much are you spending on eating out? How much are you spending on clothing, your shoes, your clothes, all that kind of stuff? How much are you spending on, let's say you're a parent, on daycare? How much are you spending on daycare? How much are you spending on transportation? We all know that gas ain't cheap. How much are you spending on transportation? You've got to list out everything, every tiny thing, whether you're spending $5 on it, whether you're spending $10 on it, you've got to list it out. And then list everything out and then see whether all of that is less than what you earn, then at least you're not overspending. Because many times, if your expenses are more than your income, then you're definitely borrowing money somewhere. And many times for us, we rely on credit cards, right? If we have so much expenses and we're not making enough money, we rely on credit card. Other people might just directly be borrowing money elsewhere. But you have to first fix that problem. And that's why, regardless of the fact that you work, you still feel broke, you feel poor. And that's because you are not managing the fundamentals of your finances, which is you budgeting where your funds should go through. And so let's assume that I earn $1,000 and at the end of the month, I'm spending like $1,200. Where am I getting $200 from? Clearly, it's credit card, right? I'm spending credit card. So I have got to fix that. And the fast way for me to fix that is for me to take an audit of all of my expenses and start taking out a few things that are not needed. Yeah, you heard that right. That are not needed. Many times we want things, but do we truly need it? Now, if we don't have enough money, then we don't have the luxury to be spending anyhow. So if you don't have enough, you can't just be spending on everything. You can't have Netflix and Prime at the same time. Stick to one. You can't be eating out. Like, cook at home, right? There's some things that you're probably going to have to work on. Now, obviously, as humans, there are certain things that are non-negotiable, right? For some of us, it might be the fact that we fight every month, and so 10% has got to go to us fighting. Some of us, we give, and a certain amount has to go to us giving. Some are non-negotiable. So you have to figure out, like, based on the things that I cannot negotiate, other things like mortgage, rent, you can't negotiate that. You've got to pay that regardless, right? All of those things are non-negotiable. You got to put them up first because, I can't reduce these things. These things are fixed costs going out every month. So you're going to stay on your flexible cost of the things you can take away. Like many times people don't watch cable, even though we're paying for it. So maybe it's time for that cable to go and stick to YouTube, right? Since you have internet, watch movies on YouTube, watch your music on YouTube, do all of that. And since you have Netflix, like you can't have cable and Netflix at the same time. Having a budget makes you have those conversations because you have the data right in front of you. You can see the things are not looking good. One of the most difficult situations that we can be in is living paycheck to paycheck, because the question you always have to ask yourself is, what happens when that paycheck stops? Will I be able to survive the next month? And many times, many of us working, we can't. And that's why we're in this stress. We're always stressed out. We're overwhelmed. We're always paying bills. It feels like we're just working to pay bills, working to pay bills. Then at the end of the day, why am I working? Like, if I don't work and I don't have to pay bills, then let me just go live in my parents' house, right? But no, we can't do that. So we've got to learn how to manage our funds. And it starts with budgeting. Because when you have a budget, you know exactly where that money is going to. And once you know where that money is going to, that is the first step in you controlling your finances. And that's the first step in you actually building wealth. If you don't have a plan, where are you even going to get money to invest from? If you're soaked in debt, how are you ever going to invest? Because every money that comes through has to go back into paying those debts. So you've got to start with a budget and make sure that your expenses are less than your income. And if things are not adding up, then you've got to delete a few things so that they can add up. And that's why zero-based budgeting is very essential, where at the start, before the month comes to an end, before you get your paycheck, you've already created your budget. I'm going to get $1,000 at the end of this month. These are all the things I'm going to spend that $1,000 on. So at the end of the day, both of them got to equate to $1,000, right? And you need to give categories for each of those things. The whole thing cannot be expenses, right? Where money's just going out. What money are you keeping for yourself? That's when you need to figure out, like, am I saving at least 10% for myself? Am I saving 10% towards investment or debts? Because if you have debts like credit card or any other type of debt outside of mortgage, you've got to repay those because the interest rates on those things are extremely high. So you have to think about it. Do I have money to repay back my debt so that I can have a plan for when these things will be paid back? The day I knew that this credit card debts were ridiculous was the day that I had a credit card bill of $1,000. And it said, if you paid the minimum payment of, I think, maybe $20, I can't remember, it would take you about 7 years to pay back. I'm like, what the? Like, seriously, on 1,000? I'm going to take 7 years? And that's the reality. And that's why we've got to be intentional about our finances. Because imagine you having $1,000 or you owing $1,000 and it's taking 7 years to pay back. So what's going to happen to all of those credit cards that you also have? And trust me, don't think I'm perfect. There was a time that I had credit card bills that almost totaled $100,000. And that was because I wasn't paying attention to my finances, right? Because when I started making more money, I felt like, you know what? Remember that when I didn't have, I said the budgeting was for when you had. And then finally, when I had, I still wasn't really budgeting. Right? So at the end of the day, you have to overcome those limiting beliefs that actually stop you from doing things. And it doesn't matter. Like sometimes you might be in a phase in your life where you're just going to have that belief. And other times you might improve. And if you're not careful, you might fall back to that same trap. I remember the first house that I bought. That was my first introduction to, personal finance and taking charge of my finances. I wasn't earning quite a lot, compared to now, but because I had a budget, because I was intentional about my finances, I was able to buy a first house on a very comfortable salary. And when I started earning much more, I wasn't even able to find the same down payment to buy another house. Guess what? Because I didn't have a budget. So I was just spending my money. I can never remember the things I was spending money on because every time you check your account, there is money in there. So you're like, oh, I have money to do this. Oh, yes, I have money to do this. But in reality, you don't have money to do it because guess what? You're either swiping your debit card or you're swiping your credit card. You are not planning for that money. So that money is not working for you. And you're just waiting for the next paycheck coming up in 2 weeks. And then you're like, oh, yes, I have money. And then a week down the line, oh, shoot, I'm broke. And that is what is keeping us poor as working professionals, despite the fact that we're earning salaries regularly every 2 weeks. It feels like a few days past those 2 weeks, we are broke. We're back to square one. We're back and acting like people that don't have jobs. So it's time for us to step up our game. And for you to step up your game, you've got to take personal finance as a number one priority. That is a skill set that we all need to have. We need to know how to manage our finances. And it starts with a budget. It starts with you being intentional about your funds. So I am going to give you an Excel document. It's going to be your money management plan. It's you getting started, being intentional about your funds. There'll be a template on that Excel that would help you plan out your income and plan out your expenses. Now, another thing that's really important, it's good for you to have at least 2 or 3 accounts where you're able to put your bucket of funds. Many times when we have money in one account, we think we have money, but we truly don't have it. So it's good for you to have, especially your expense, in a separate account so that you know that this is all I've got to spend, right? Because imagine if mortgage is inside that money. You don't even know when you spend mortgage money, when you see a nice shoe. But if you separate out those expenses, you're able to know that, okay, this is my savings account, 10% goes into this account. This is my emergency fund account, 10% goes into this account. This is my current expenses account. So every expense I've got to spend for this month goes into this account. That is you automating your finances and managing your finances. And guess what? You will begin to live a better life. You will begin to be able to see the reality of the money that you have. And if you're truly not making enough, then you would know for sure that it's time for me to step up my game, get more skills so I can get better pay, or maybe start a side hustle that can bring me a pay. But if you don't even have the data to work with, then you don't even know how deep of a hole that you are in. So it's time for us to change our life. It's time for us to be financially independent. It's time for us to actually be rich, because once you have a job, it's the first step towards building wealth. So we cannot afford to have a job and yet be broke. So it's time for you to be intentional about your life, about your finances, and about your wealth. I hope today's video will be all that you need to get started. Don't forget to click the link in the description so that you're able to download the money management plan that I have for you as my gift. Thank you so much for watching today's video. And if you did enjoy today's video, kindly like, kindly subscribe, and please feel free to share with your friends. Thank you very much. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.